Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Will and this is an episode of the Bald Book Geek. This is a disclaimer. This video is not a direct attack on anyone. It does not devalue your opinions, and this is just my general musings. It is nothing to do with anyone else. It is just my opinion. If you don't like it, go away. Anyway, YA fantasy. YA literature tends to go in fads, and before I go into that deeper, I just want to say that YA is not a genre, it is a readership. It is fundamentally not a genre, in any sense of the term, and I just want to put that out there. So, YA fantasy is the big, hot YA trend. Everyone and their mother seems to be reading and writing YA fantasy. A few years ago it was YA dystopia, YA romance, YA paranormal romance. It's fads. It's nothing more than a fad, and in a few years' time, people aren't even going to remember 90% of the books they read, or going to be ripping them apart saying, oh, how did I like this novel? Fundamentally, this is not about all YA fantasy. I've read some phenomenal YA fantasy. The Blood Heir is a phenomenal YA fantasy that everyone should read, whether you're in the age group that YA is intended for or an adult. But a very generic side of YA fantasy, and that's what I want to talk about here. So what are my main issues with this very generic cookie cutter YA fantasy? Most of the time, these novels are the same stories reskinned. I've picked that up a lot. The same kind of story beats, the same kind of plots, the same kind of notions, the same characters. And they just reskin them like a Minecraft skin. It's just a different coat of paint on the same old generic story, and it's really boring. I also don't like most of the protagonists of these books. They're usually cookie cutter, and I get that with YA they don't tend to go as deeply because they're designed for the reader to project themselves into. But most of these characters are bland, and there is nothing worse than the I'm not like other girls trope, which is really, really annoying. I'm just poor and normal, but I'm absolutely stunning, and everyone, and I don't know it, but everyone thinks I'm attractive, and all these boys and girls are fawning over me. And oh, I'm special, and I have all these powers, and I'm a chosen one. Like, it's fucking boring. I also don't like the world building. The world building in YA fantasy is extremely generic and very dull. Most YA fantasy, again, not all, a lot of the world building within YA fantasy is just bland. It is non-existent. A lot of these writers are so focused on their love story or some cliched YA trope that they forget you need a comprehensive and enjoyable world in fantasy. And I think a lot of YA fantasy just fails on that level. Like, there's a lot of books that I've read that have potential to be good, but that's kind of, the potential is let down by the writing. And I think a lot of writers are held back. Sadly, YA is read mainly by women in their mid-20s and into their 30s and 40s. Yet, most of these books belong on the shelves of children's literature, i.e. 13 to about 16. Well, 12 to about 16. And I think people do tend to latch onto them. And I think with the book community, full stop, the only reason people read them is that everyone else is reading them and it's getting views. Publishers push these books over and over and over. At the end of the day, it's just about making money. I think there's so many books with great potential, and I've read some great YA fantasy, and like I said, Blood Heir. But why does it have to be so generic and so boring? Like, when paranormal romance was a thing, like, the amount of books that were just like Twilight, and people lap them up, and no one cares about them, and give it, 5-6 years from now, no one's going to care about 90% of these god-awful fucking books everyone's reading. Like, maybe standing out in the crowd and reading something different might help. It's a shame that something with so much potential is so wasted. So as always, my name is Will, I'm the Bald Book Geek, and comment below as always. Bye.